I mean, if they asked Squawk Box to underwrite the IPO, we would do it. The raise
simply
not so
for the cachet. We might do it for the cachet.
Just the really? Okay.
Well, they might need us for the cachet, so you have to think about it.
We are
double
flush with cachet around here. We are. Joining us for the next 2 hours to talk politics, the economy, and more, Republican Senator Ron Johnson, a member of the Appropriations and Budget Committee. You haven't been there long. You ran a business. You're outspoken in your support of business and in criticizing the administration for kind of being anti-business. So we'll just get that out of the way right at the top.
Well, I'm the loyal opposition, but speaking of cachet, Joe.
Yeah, I saw this. The whole cheesehead phenomenon.
I mean, last time I was here, you were giving me trouble about that.
I'm not going to win.
It was a clear, case of
if I wore it?
Come on.
What if I wore it and then I took it off and my hair came off?
And Joe's got a cheese tie.
It's gross.
And Becky,
I have a shirt.
Beautiful.
I have a Green Bay Packers shirt. Andrew's got the cheese tie, which I actually really like.
How's that look?
Why we have that with Super Bowl coming up on Sunday that has nothing to do with
Unfortunately. Okay, I'm sorry.
You haven't endorsed anyone.
No.
And you said that it would be. Said it would be meaningless. At least it wouldn't be the kiss of death for one of the candidates. You at least said it'll be meaningless if you were to endorse one.
It's in Wisconsin. I'm kind of new on the scene. Nobody knows who I am, so it's kind of pointless. I kind of want to see the thing play out.
Romney looks good in Florida at this point.
Yeah, it looks like he is.
He's at 86% on in trade. Do you expect Romney will be the nominee?
It's kind of looking that way, but who knows? Who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to happen here?
Do you think he's more electable than Newt Gingrich? We're going to have Kellyanne on, and by the time Kellyanne Conway, who is one of his advisors, by the time she gets through with this, we all may be saying Newt's a better candidate.
Sounds like after $15 million spent in Florida, Romney certainly made Newt pretty unelectable in Florida. So.
Well, we'll see what happens in the southern states. I want to move on. Since one thing you do know about is Wisconsin, and I want to. I watch what's happening with Scott Walker, and we've had him on. We get mail when we have him on. The vitriol in the mail and that we get. This is a huge election. I just want to show you the Journal wrote about it on Saturday, and we're going to go through a couple of these things here because I think it's worthwhile. Wall Street Journal. It's the most important non-presidential election of the decade. Okay, the evidence is mounting that it wasn't the economic Armageddon that people said. A $3 billion deficit is now a $300 million surplus without new taxes that the unions wanted, and in stark contrast to what happened in Illinois.
Without laying off public employees.
Without laying off. We'll get to that. The next thing, a survey of major business owners when he was elected thought 10% of Wisconsin was headed, 10% thought that the state was headed in the right direction. It's 94% right now with him. All right, that's not all. This is what he asked people to do. Check this out. Granting local governments the legal authority to hire and fire teachers based on merit. What a concept. We're trying to do that all over the place. 5.8% into their pensions. It had been 0. And then 12.6% into health care. That's about half of what private workers pay right now. It's already saved local governments $475 million. I got one more thing to do. Rather than assaulting government workers, it allowed all these guys to stay employed, all these union guys. Why you would think unions would be happy that there weren't these huge layoffs?
No, the big problem that unions had with it is one of the elements of that is that the Governor Walker did not allow local governments to automatically deduct union dues out of their paychecks.
That's what I'm gonna get to.
That was the Armageddon.
And who likes that? Let's read that. That's the next thing. The union brass are the one, and this is always what we hear. It's not necessarily the rank and file all the time. The union brass, when you have mandatory withholding, they get huge sums of money to buy political influence.
I mean, they spent $30 million in the
so far.
Yeah.
On that.
Oh yeah, it'll leave me more. No doubt.
And then the
about
last thing I want to say, now these national unions have to decide: do they spend? And right now, I think it's going in Walker's favor. I think as far as opinion polls are, although they got 1 million signatures, I don't know how many dead people signed it, but they got to decide whether to spend 30 to 50 on Walker.
Right.
Or what they would normally do, what they did in the last election. The SEIU spent $80 million on Obama, on President Obama's election last time. So they got to decide, 30 to 50. Do you do it on Walker or do you do it on Obama? But this frames in a microcosm what the national election is about as well.
You're always going to have class warfare, rich versus poor. I mean, you are. But I think the real class warfare we're engaged in this country is public sector versus private sector. Size of government versus the size of the private sector. And in Wisconsin, local governments after local governments are able to balance their budgets because of the flexibility that Governor Walker gave them. Now, I don't want to underpay public sector workers, but when we're running these types of deficits, both in state governments and federal governments, we can't afford to overpay them. So we need to benchmark pay. We need to benchmark benefits. I mean, let's face it, there aren't very many private companies that the employees are only contributing 12.6% to the health care, or only 5% toward their retirement. So we've got to get these things in line.
And when you say the 5%, it threw me off at first. It's just 5% of their, or 12% of their overall healthcare costs that are being picked up, not 12.6% of their paycheck.
Right, it's 5% of the contribution.
Of the contribution that goes in.
Which is half of
it's minimal. It's minimal. So.
But you look at I mean, really, you mentioned some of the emails or was it an email or was it a letter?
There was an email that got sent out to every member of the Wisconsin State Legislature that basically said, we're going to put a bullet in your head. We know where you and your family lives. Now, that didn't make national news, but seriously, this went out to men, women with young children. No, the levels of intimidation that were foisted on members of the Wisconsin legislature was amazing. And they just showed real courage, and that's what we need. We need elected officials that are willing to actually acknowledge that we have a problem, whether it's in the state government or whether it's in the federal government, and actually have the courage to make the tough decisions, take the tough votes to start fixing the problem. And we did in Wisconsin. We haven't started doing it on a federal level yet.
I just saw an article yesterday that said that the percent of the employment pool overall in the nation has dropped in terms of the union percentage once again. So obviously unions are feeling the pressure.
But it was flat this past year.
Down by 1/10%.
It didn't decline as it had.
It was down by 1/10%.
It's because workers, and we have business at, my business, we were always non-union because we always had a very open door policy. We didn't let problems fester. And quite frankly, when the people that worked with me took a look at $900 to $1,200 a year in union dues, I'd rather just work with Ron myself and work, individuals after individual are taking that exact same outlook and say, I'd rather work with the company directly as opposed to have somebody I'm paying to bargain for me. And that's their choice.
Well, those are some of those numbers, they don't lie. And it at least gives you an idea that it is possible to not be Illinois, and it is possible to do this, but you are going to get a backlash that you can't even believe if you do this. But I think there's parallels to the national election.
No, it's extremely important that Governor Walker doesn't get recalled, because if the reward for showing courage, for stepping to the plate and fixing these problems is to get turned out of office before your term's even up, that would send a horrible signal to other elected officials. And let's face it, on a national level, we were talking about a $1.8 billion a year deficit in Wisconsin. 1.3 trillion on a national level. The problem's almost 1,000 times worse. We're going to need elected officials with a little bit of courage, and that would be a very bad signal.
He was at 37% approval, I think. But he's back to 50, above 50 at this point with Portland.
Yeah, it's going to be close. I'm hopeful. As I travel all over the state of Wisconsin, there's still a great deal of support for what he's doing. And let's face it, like I said, local governments are balancing their budgets because of that flexibility that he gave in that Budget Act.
I'm sure you have some comments about this, right?
Yeah. So, the senator's going to be with us for the rest of the program, but if you'd like to write in, if you have comments or thoughts about what we've been talking about, please feel free to do that. You can email us at squawk@cnbc.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, @SquawkCNBC is our handle. Up next, we have the chief equity strategist for the world's largest money management firm, BlackRock's Bob Dahl, will be joining us right after the break. And at 7:30 Eastern Time, we have Senator David Vittner joining us on set to talk about the Florida primary and much more. Squawk Box will be right back.
This CNBC program is sponsored by Baird, wealth management since 1919.
A car is either luxury or it isn't. If you want a luxury car with a standard power moonroof, your options are going to be limited. If you want standard leather-trimmed seats, you're going to have even fewer. And if you want standard keyless access, then your choice is obvious. The Lexus ES. It's complete luxury in a class full of compromises. See your Lexus dealer.
Flow some energy into your portfolio. The new Alarian MLP ETF creates an MLP access product focused on energy infrastructure. Master limited partnerships operate physical assets such as pipelines that transport or tanks that store natural gas, crude oil, and refined products. Flow some energy into your portfolio in one word: Alarian. Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Visit AlarianMLP.com for a prospectus. Read it carefully.
Business Intelligence. CNBC.
The global markets hit home when the closing bells ring in Europe. How will their volatility affect the U.S. markets? The best team in business tracks Europe's every move. Squawk on the Street, the European close. 11:25 a.m. Eastern, today on CNBC.
Look closely. This $50 Buffalo gold piece is the first United States coin ever struck using .9999, that's 4 nines, pure 24-karat gold. The U.S. government had to stop production because of a shortage of specially made gold blanks. It's no wonder the price of this edition is going through the roof. Now you can reserve your own copy clad in 14 milligrams of pure gold. The final issue price was to be set at $50 per proof, but now this private non-monetary gold-clad masterpiece can be yours for only $9.95. With gold skyrocketing, price can only be guaranteed for 7 days. Each new 2012 $50 gold Buffalo Tribute proof is clad in 14 milligrams of pure gold, is proof struck, and utilizes the famous Buffalo nickel design. Strict limit of 5 proofs per caller. You must hurry. Call now.
Call 1-800-493-5129, 1-800-493-5129. Strict limit of 5 proofs per caller. Call 1-800-493-5129.
Kramer.
Booyah!
See the world through the eyes of Jim Cramer. Mad Money, weeknights on CNBC.
Welcome back, everybody. Take a look at the futures on this Monday morning. You'll see right now those Dow futures down by about 62 points. The S&P is off by more than 7.5 points. It comes after Asia opened weaker, selling off from some 3.5-year high levels in some of those markets.
And the Dow suffered its first weekly decline of 2012 last week, but the overall trend for the market this year, very positive. Joining us now, Squawk Market Master Bob Dahl. He's the Chief Equity Strategist for BlackRock. And Bob, thank you for joining us this morning.
Morning, Andrew.
I'm curious in terms of positioning the fund, given what's going on in Europe, given the conversation around Greece, whether we get a deal today, tomorrow, whether that deal holds, how you're thinking about things.
Can I add to your list? And with the market up 20% or more in 4 months. So I think you need a little more balance in the portfolio. At some point, we'll take a pause. So while I still want my cyclical stocks like the energy names, I also want some defense in the portfolio, and healthcare fits that bill. So I think a little more balance in here. The mood's turned from negative a few months ago to, I think, a little complacent. There is more good news. I think the market will end the year higher than where we are today, but we won't go straight up.
Okay, so Bob, what was the turning point for you? And I asked that in the context, I was just talking to these guys during the break, coming back from Davos. There was all of a sudden this sense of optimism. You talked to the big multinationals, and they were thrilled about life. They weren't talking about a lot of these regulatory issues. Now, that's different from the Wall Street story, which, of course, everybody's still treading water. But when you get that bullish sentiment from the corner office, if you will, all of a sudden you say, well, maybe I got to ease off the gas?
Yeah, that's sort of my attitude. I don't want to be too early about it because mutual fund flows have just started to see equity inflows, and there's more of that to come, in my view. I think that, however, trees don't grow to the sky. And look, the fundamentals are pretty good, but we can't forget Europe is still a problem. We can't forget energy prices have moved up some. The world has some hot spots in it as well. So I don't want to sound negative, but after a 20% run in 4 months, I'm thankful that some of the cyclical names we were able to add because it looked like the world was going to end on October 1st. There's a little more complacency now.
When did you start? Was that last week that you started rebalancing things?
Yeah, exactly. Got just a little more, let's say bring the beta from 1.1, 1.05 down toward 1.02, maybe, to pick a number.
And you saw the GDP number on Friday. People are trying to parse it over the weekend. What's your prediction for the end of the year?
I think that we will have 2.5% real growth this year. Look, the 2.8 for the fourth quarter was the best since the second quarter of 2010. But as you saw, there's just all kinds of cross currents. You had the big buildup in inventory, the big decline in defense spending. I don't think either of them are sustainable. Final demand was not what we would like to see. I think we're this muddle through good enough but not great economy.
So let's talk names. What's a good name in the muddle through economy that you talk about?
Okay, so in the energy space, I want to add to Chevron on the weak earnings report last week, along with Conoco and Apache in the energy world. In healthcare, since I mentioned it, you've heard me many times, United Healthcare, McKesson, Agilent, be a couple of other names in that sector, Russ.
Right. I'm going to not consider this on your defensive list, but, you know, we've been talking this morning about the potential Facebook IPO. We may get filing later this week. Is that an IPO that you think you would try to get a piece of?
Not likely, given the kind of money I manage now. Lots of people at BlackRock will play that name. I think it's hard to value these things, and every time I look at these sorts of things, I say, wow, I can't believe how much capitalization's coming there, and I end up buying something that I understand a little bit better where it might be going.
You've been recommending high dividend stocks for, I don't know, the past year and a half on the broadcast. Is that oversold? I mean, is that idea sort of too out there at this point?
Yeah, I think you need a modification to it. I think it has to be a free cash flow. So I only want to own those dividend-paying companies that can raise their dividends. If stocks do a little better and bonds take a back seat this year, the dividend-paying stocks that don't increase their dividends, I think, will lag.
So give me a name or two on that.
I'll come back to the names I just mentioned. Chevron, right. United Healthcare, good free cash flow, decent yields, especially in Chevron's case, but year-end they'll be higher than they are today.
Fixed income, is there anything you like?
Yeah, still like the credit side. Make no mistake about it. In the world we're describing, that's okay. Credit spreads can narrow a bit. And so we would say relative to treasuries, corporates, high yield, municipals will probably do better.
Municipals. Remember when municipals were supposed to be the...
a four-letter word?
They were. They were the touch of death. Bob, thanks for coming on this morning. Appreciate your perspective. You bet.
All right, coming up, Senator David Vitter stops by the Squawk set, and then former Council of Economic Advisors Chairman Austin Goolsbee joins us to talk about Washington's fiscal battle. Squawk Box is coming right back.
Time now for today's Aflac trivia question. What studio did the Beatles use to record 191 songs? The answer when CNBC Squawk Box continues.
Man, I'm glad Aflac pays cash.
Aflac? Ha!
Isn't major medical enough?
No.
Who's going to help cover the holes in their plans?
Aflac.
Like medical bills they don't pay for.
Aflac.
Or help pay the mortgage. Or child care.
Aflac.
And everyday expenses.
Aflac.
Help your family stay afloat at Aflac.com.
MLPs own and operate the physical assets that transport and store crude oil, refined petroleum products, and natural gas. MLP mutual funds from SteelPath eliminate the burdens of K-1s or state and unrelated business taxable income taxes. Our mutual fund platform provides liquidity at NAV, creating a transparent MLP access product. Before investing, read our prospectus carefully. Consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. SteelPath, MLP investing made easy.
The true story that inspired the world is now the family event.
3 gray whales are trapped in the ice.
That will inspire everyone.
They need help.
There's nothing you can do.
There's always something you can do.
Winner of Heartland's Truly Moving Picture Award.
We need a ship that can break through the ice.
Nothing's that simple in the Arctic. This Friday,
the town has shut down, answering the call to help out on the ice.
Big Miracle, inspired by the true story. Rated PG.
20 pages. Boom! The other office devices, they don't get me. They're all like, hey brother, doesn't it bother you that no one notices you? And I'm like, doesn't it bother you? You're not reliable? And they say, shut up. And I'm like, you shut up. In business, it's all about reliability. Because these guys aren't just hitting print, they're hitting dream. So that's what I do. I print dreams, baby. Big dreams.
Yeah, it's a big mess. But don't worry, Cleanup's already underway.
When the things that matter most are on the line, make sure we are too. The disaster recovery team at 1-800-SERVE-PRO. Like it never even happened.
At LendingTree, mortgage rates are shockingly low. A 30-year fixed is just 3.5%, so refinance now to save thousands. Only LendingTree gives you up to 4 competitive offers, so you get the best loan guaranteed. Go to LendingTree.com today.
Ordinary people, extraordinary success. Tonight, they muscled their way to profits, rode the waves to wealth, and made a fortune from a food fight. All new How I Made My Millions, right after Trash Inc. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNBC.
Now the answer to today's Aflac trivia question. What studio did the Beatles use to record 191 songs? The answer, Abbey Road Studios.
If you've got any comments or questions about anything you see here on Squawk this morning, Facebook, some of the issues we've been talking about, unions, email us at squawk@cnbc.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, the handle @SquawkCNBC. Up next, Louisiana Senator David Vitter is going to join us as guest host Ron Johnson to talk about the Florida primary Squawk Box. Come back right after this.
Tomorrow on Squawk Box, the profit pipeline from Eli Lilly Chairman and CEO John Lechleiter, plus a preview of the Florida primary with DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Squawk Box, starting at 6 a.m. Eastern.
So, tell me again what happened?
I was downstairs making coffee and we heard it. Just came crashing through the roof out of nowhere.
What is it?
It's our IRA.
Any idea what could have caused this?
Maybe. I just sort of threw a little money here, a little money there, and I loaded up on something my dentist told me was hot.
Yeah.
What's happened to us? How did we end up here at the mercy of a power outlet?
Come on, people, we're better than this. I'm talking to you. And you. Off the floor, everyone. Up, up, up.
Now boarding business class now boarding.
It's time for an Ultrabook with the longest battery life. The HP Folio, inspired by Intel and powered by the Intel Core i5 processor, starting at $999. Get yours at participating partners.
This is an RC robotic claw.
A high school science teacher made me what I am today.
Our science teacher helped us build it.
Now I'm a geologist at Chevron, and I get to help science teachers.
It has 4 servo motors and a wireless microcontroller.
Over the last 3 years, we've put nearly $100 million into American education. That's thousands of kids learning to love science.
Isn't that cool?
That's pretty cool.
It's earnings season, and this is Earnings Central. Tomorrow on Squawk Box, cashing in on components, reports from big oil to big pharma. And on Closing Bell, will this internet giant kindle record profits? Earnings Central, CNBC tomorrow.
There's nothing quite like the sound of gold. I've been metal detecting for over 30 years, and I still get a thrill digging up an old coin, a beautiful ring, or my favorite, gold nugget. The new White's metal detectors make it easy. They show you what's in the ground.
Start finding treasure with an American-made White's metal detector. Gold and silver prices are setting records, so call now for your free catalog.
You could pay for your metal detector with just one find. It's a great hobby for the young and the young at heart.
Call now.
There's nothing worse than going to the post office and waiting in line.
I don't have to leave my desk and get up and go to the post office anymore.
With Stamps.com, you can print real U.S. postage for all your letters and packages.
It gives you the exact amount of postage you need the instant you need it. Can you print only stamps? No. First class?
Priority mail, certified, international.
And the mailman picks it up.
I don't leave the shop anymore.
Get a 4-week trial plus $100 in extras, including postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/TV and never go to the post office again.
Welcome back to Squawk Box on this Monday morning on CNBC. Among the stories that we're following this morning, Italy's borrowing costs fell at its latest auction of long-term debt. 10-year yields fell to 6.08% compared to nearly 7% a month ago. 5-year yields came in at an average of 5.39%, down from 6.5% at the auction just today. Former UBS trader Kweku Adebole is pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of fraud and false accounting. He's been accused of rogue trading that cost UBS $2.3 billion. And Lockheed Martin and Boeing both been invited to bid to build a new fighter jet for South Korea. You're waving your head. I don't know what that's about. The country planning to invest $7.4 billion in a next-generation fighter jet program.
You should never reference things.
I should never reference.
Because someone said in my ear, you can pronounce Kweku Adebole, not Carl Quintanilla. That's what
Is that what happened? Is that because you were nodding and I was thinking?
Someone said in my ear.
I thought you were looking at some kind of.
You got Kweku's name, but you can't do Carl's name.
Quintanilla. Quintanilla.
You got it.
There you go.
See, Quintanilla, you're undercutting him. As you're saying he can't. And he can.
Can do Nita.
If anybody can, he can.
He's the
So yes, he can.
Carl can do Nita.
Can do
Carl Quintanilla. There you go.
Yeah, that's why. See, but you should. They're saying something to me. So if I make a move, don't reference
sometimes
it. I would not have said it.
Sometimes when I'm going through the news, you do this.
Awkward Moment has been brought to you by Andrew Ross Sorkin.
No, wait a second.
Thank you very
much.
much.
You made him.
Oh, no, I didn't.
You made.
Yep. Thank you.
Don't look at him.
I'm
Don't ever.
Try to avoid
blinders. I
try throughout for 3 hours to keep the blinders on. It's very challenging.
You've seen broadcast news. There's a running commentary in my ear.
I thought it was the voices in your head.
Well, that's the other ear. Right. All right, I'm hearing all this stuff. I hear things over here too, and there's nothing there. All right.
All right, let's talk about the battle for the GOP presidential nomination. It continues with Florida's primary tomorrow. Joining us right now with his thoughts on the best path for Republicans is Senator David Vitter. He is a Republican from Louisiana. And Senator, thank you for joining us on the set.
Great to be with you all, Becky.
We have been trying to handicap this race and going back and forth.
I stopped about 12 cycles and 154 debates ago.
You're the smart man for doing this. But what do you think as we head into Florida right now? It's a little easier since we're so close.
All the polls suggest Romney's doing well there, so we'll see. It's obviously up to the voters. If he does win and do well there, I think he's going into probably what's a good month in terms of what else is teed up around the country. So we'll see. But again, I really stopped predicting many cycles and dozens of debates ago.
Yeah, you're a smart man for doing that. What we've been trying to posit around the table this morning is whether the back and forth and the harsh turn that this primary run has given Romney, is that good for the candidate if he is the eventual candidate, or does it weaken him by making him spend his money ahead of time?
Probably a little of both. Look, like every Republican out there, at least that I talk to, I'm pretty frustrated by the process. I like debate and discussion, but I think it's so many debates in particular and the nature of this back and forth between Newt and Mitt is really hurting. So I hope we get beyond that, and I hope we get back on issues, particularly economic issues and the Obama economy.
When you say you're frustrated by the process, do you mean the process of primaries in general, or do you mean in particular the number of debates this time?
This year, and the obvious thing to point to is so many debates. And when you have two candidates in particular going at each other in a pretty personal way, all of the debates magnify that, and I think turn a lot of people off.
Is there an argument to be made that if all this comes out early, that then maybe it doesn't pain the next, it doesn't put all this pressure on them later?
Somewhat, and I think it's good practice for the nominee, whoever it is, so I agree with that. But still, I think, that could have been gained with 12 debates, not 192 or whatever we're at now.
So, David, you and I both think we'd like to get on the issues. We'd like to do the comparison between the path that Obama's taking us on versus the path that, Republicans will take this country on, particularly the energy. You're a real expert in terms of, what this country really has to offer in energy. Can you just kind of comment the difference between Obama's approach versus our approach?
Well, I'm pleased all the Republican candidates are talking about American energy. And to me, that should be a key component of our platform, whoever the nominee is. It's a win-win-win. And I say it 3 times because first, it means energy independence, less dependence on very unstable places like the Middle East. But second, it's great jobs, great American jobs. And oh, by the way, jobs that are impossible to outsource. You can't take a domestic energy job and send it to India. It's not going to happen. And then third, it's actually deficit reduction. You know, the second biggest source of revenue to the federal government after only the income tax is royalty revenue on domestic energy production. So if we get into that in a much more aggressive way, we can produce a lot of revenue and have deficit and debt reduction. Like Ron, like you are, I'm all for more revenue being part of the deficit and debt solution. But it's a big difference between getting revenue from job creation in the energy sector or other growth and just jacking up tax rates.
What needs to happen with an energy policy? What specifically are the most important? Let's say 3 things that need to happen.
Well, in general, open up access. You know, we're the single most energy-rich country in the world, bar none. A lot of Americans don't realize that, don't think of that, but we're the richest in terms of energy resources. Russia is second. No Middle Eastern country comes close. The problem is we're the only country in the world that takes 95% of those resources and puts it off limits. Can't drill off the East Coast, can't drill off the West Coast, can't drill now in the Eastern Gulf, can't drill in a lot of offshore Alaska, can't touch ANWR, and increasingly tougher and tougher and tougher on land, including in western states where there are enormous shale finds. So 1, 2, and 3 is opening up access significantly on land and offshore. And I'd add to that a particular wrinkle. Hydraulic fracking is a very key and safe process for these shale finds. And it's under attack from the left, including Obama's EPA, with no scientific basis, in my opinion and experts' opinion. That's a big deal. That's a key issue.
Well, there was the Gasland movie, I guess, that was out that I think riled a lot of people up and had them wondering about it.
New York Times science, not valid science, but it did rile a lot of people up, which was its intent.
And that other movie.
What's the other movie?
What's the other movie?
An Inconvenient Truth. I mean, you got 2 of them back to back.
But hold on, I'm going to push back only because you did say New York Times science. I have to. There are scientists, and lots of them, that do believe that there is global warming and also believe, frankly, that fracking can potentially be dangerous.
Well, first of all, I was focused on fracking. I don't think there's any peer-reviewed scientific study that's pointed to a real case of drinking water contamination. None, zero, nothing, zip. So I do not think there's peer-reviewed valid science in that direction.
And let's face it, global warming is not settled science. There's a great piece in the Wall Street Journal that just ran last week.
Yep. Joe and I were emailing about it. Yep.
As well as, number one, how about build the Keystone XL pipeline?
Absolutely.
I mean, that is just a no-brainer.
And don't you think it does get built, though, ultimately, and just with a different path?
Well, it might get built, to British Columbia and have that oil be used by China. That's the concern.
That's the danger. If we drag our feet too much, they can build it in another direction, and that's a real danger. Also, it has a domestic energy impact because it's going to have on-ramps within the country, in the Dakotas and Oklahoma, and that's needed to get backlogged U.S. energy to refineries. I'm
going to play the devil's advocate for just 1 second, which is to say that there is an argument to be made that gas is going to just move across our country, and it's not going to ultimately come back to us. We're not going to be the beneficiaries, except for building this thing and maintaining this thing. It's not actually bringing energy to us.
We're becoming
Do you buy that?
That may happen, but I absolutely don't buy that it's not a benefit to us. We're becoming a refined energy product exporter, and that's a good thing. That's a great thing. That's wonderful for our economy.
But how is that a good thing for getting us energy independent? I mean, if the reasons that we need these things, the number one issue is that we want to be energy independent from places that hate us.
Well, first of all, we're exporting that refined product now mostly because of the recession. I mean, demand has gone in the tank, gone through the floor. So hopefully that's going to come back. And when it does, we're going to have that product here in this country.
Yeah, if we need it, we'll have it. And let's face it, you're talking about $7 billion infrastructure, private sector infrastructure spending on the pipeline itself, $20 billion total, 20,000 jobs for construction, 100,000 long-term jobs. I think that's pretty beneficial to the economy.
I will push back just to correct. 20,000 jobs potentially on the construction. 100,000 jobs long term.
What infrastructure project
is not the case. And some people argue, as you know, that we're not talking about 20,000 jobs. We're talking about 2,000.
Those are the estimates.
These guys that work in construction go from job to job every single time. What infrastructure job is permanent? That you know,
I wouldn't belittle that in a boom economy.
I'm not
even in the 800.
So maybe some 80,000 jobs.
I'm not belittling the number. All I'm doing is fact checking the number. I think 20,000.
They go from job to job till they retire.
You've seen the debate is somewhere between 2,000 and 20,000, the 100,000. I've never heard of 100,000.
It's a faux debate.
It will create jobs.
It makes no sense.
I'm not arguing we shouldn't be doing the Keystone. I'm just trying to suggest the numbers are maybe a little different.
I don't think the permanent workers for the Hoover Dam they're not still there building the dam, but it was a huge boon at the time for the economy. How long did
but you can't use it as a talking point if you don't.
Every infrastructure project.
Not an argument with that. The jobs, we don't know exactly how many, though. It will create jobs. We know that.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
And then, if you ever use the same multiplier that Zandy used on the stimulus number of jobs,
that must be 100,000.
It would be much more than 100,000 jobs. If you use, but it's so funny that to the left, the public infrastructure is like the holy grail. But suddenly the private infrastructure, there's really no jobs. None of them are permanent, and there's no multiplier effect. It's unbelievable. It's insane.
As you stare at me.
We're all staring at you.
You asked for it.
What I like is when you say I'm going to play devil's advocate. You're not playing devil's advocate. You're playing yourself. You don't need to play devil's advocate.
No, actually, because I personally think that the Keystone pipeline probably should ultimately get built.
I like.
It's just a matter of can you do it safely?
Yeah,
probably
should.
That's the question. You know what's not? You know why you can't do it safely? Because there's already so many pipelines in the sand hills that you might run into one that's already there. So that might not be safe as you're crisscrossing the entire region with previous pipelines that are already there.
Senator, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for the invite.
Checking the futures as we head to a break. It says up next we're going to talk about politics.
Again?
I don't know. Down 69. Class warfare, the economy. The former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. Here, there you go. Austin Goolsbee will join us. Squawk Box will be right
back. The ultimate devil's advocate.
A car is either luxury or it isn't. If you want a luxury car with a standard power moonroof, your options are going to be limited. If you want standard leather-trimmed seats, you're going to have even fewer. And if you want standard keyless access, then your choice is obvious. The Lexus ES. It's complete luxury in a class full of compromises. See your Lexus dealer.
My job is to find the next big sound.
They sound awesome tonight!
And when I do find it, I share it with the world.
You landed the U.S. tour? Done! This is fantastic!
Music is my life. And I want to make the most of it without missing a beat.
Fly without putting your life on pause. Be yourself non-stop. American Airlines.
I'm a serious trader, so I want to trade at a place that really gets who I am and what I need, and still gives me a great price.
At Charles Schwab, you get everything you need to trade your way, all for $8.95 a trade.
Here, it's all about trading.
Start trading with the intuitive Street Smart Edge platform and use its tools like Strategy Builder to screen for stocks, find opportunities faster, and compare your strategies against other traders. At Schwab, you also have the resources to research and trade across 30 countries with more than 40 stock exchanges around the globe. Plus, talk strategy with dedicated trading specialists, attend workshops and webinars, and get up and running faster with a personalized introduction to all that Schwab offers. Get it all for a great price of $8.95 a trade.
This is how I like to trade.
Open an account and trade up to 6 months commission-free. Call 1-877-412-6113. Talk to Chuck today.
All energy development comes with some risk, but proven technologies allow natural gas producers to supply affordable, cleaner energy while protecting our environment. Across America, these technologies protect air by monitoring air quality and reducing emissions, protect water through conservation and self-contained recycling systems, and protect land by reducing our footprint and respecting wildlife. America's natural gas, domestic, abundant, clean energy to power our lives. That's smarter power today.
The The global markets hit home when the closing bells ring in Europe. How will their volatility affect the U.S. markets? The best team in business tracks Europe's every move. Squawk on the Street, the European close. 11:25 a.m. Eastern, today on CNBC.
It is a very big week for both the economy and politics. The Florida primary comes tomorrow and the January jobs report Friday. Here now to discuss these topics and a lot more, Austin Goolsbee, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. And Austin, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the conversation we just had with the senator before, but I'm curious, as you watch the Republicans, Romney and Gingrich, try to beat each other up as much as they are, and then you think about the election later, let's say a couple months down the road, does this help or hurt President Obama? Only because I might argue, actually, that it takes some of these issues actually off the table rather than put them on.
Well, you know, I actually somewhat agreed with Senator Vitter that it does a little of both. I think what you might be missing there, Andrew, and it may work out the way you describe it, but in 2008, where you had kind of a very extended primary for the Democrats and still pretty extended for the Republicans, was when these things would come up, say the equivalent of the tax returns or the Bain stuff, the candidates were getting as much information out about the thing as they could at the very beginning. And so then 6 months later, they would say, but this is old news. We addressed everything about this 6 months ago. In this case, I don't know if that's necessarily going to play out, because some of these things for Romney, he hasn't wanted to be as forthcoming as he might get grilled in the general. So I don't know if they've been put to bed. I'm curious about business and the business community and the way the president is going to approach the business community over the next couple of months. There is a sentiment, fair or unfair, that he is anti-business. Does he just let that go and say, you know what, I'm not going to win those guys. It doesn't matter. I'm going to let Romney or Gingrich perhaps take them. Or does he tack in a different way later on? How do you see that playing out? Well, yeah, I saw in the State of the Union, he was sticking to a position which is arguably, here are a bunch of specific things that I'm doing to help this industry, or here's how I want to help business. I don't think he's going to change the perception among a bunch of folks that they think he's anti-business, but he's at least trying on the substance, it felt like to me, to have a pro-economic line. And if the data were to keep improving the way they have the last 2 or 3 months, I think most of business is not really political. They're pretty pragmatic. And if the economy's doing well, they're going to tend to say, well, you think the business community could come out and support the president ultimately? I don't know that they would. As I say, my read of most business people I talk to is they're not very political. So I doubt they'd get out front and say, oh, I love what the president's doing. But I think they would be far less prone to come out and say, well, I really disagree with what he's doing.
Say, Austin, this is Ron Johnson. Don't you think once the primary is over, and from the Republican standpoint, that this election is going to basically be about the difference between growing government and growing the private sector? And I just want to get your measure in terms of basic metrics. I mean, the size of government relationship to GDP, the size of our debt in relation to GDP. I mean, if I'm managing a business, to me, those are the two large metrics that I'd be looking at in terms of how our economy is going to be performing. And right now, this president has managed those metrics horribly. Don't you agree with that?
Well, you got a couple of things going in there. Number one, I think if you just look at the data in the GDP numbers or in the jobs numbers, you see the dynamic that you would have expected, and that is, as the recession comes off, the size of government as a share of the GDP is actually shrinking quite significantly. And we're adding, I guess we've added about 3 million jobs on the private sector, and the public sector jobs are one of the great drags on employment. Yeah, but Austin, I really think that looking at the short run deficit and especially spending or tax revenue as a share of GDP is the wrong thing to do, because it's so highly colored by the recession. But long run, I think you're right. We should be thinking about long run fiscal stuff, But we've got to have a growth plan. I think that's going to be the main thing they compare.
Well, exactly. But, so you do take a look at the long-term trends. For 50 years, the size of government was 20.2%. Yeah. And under this president, it rose to 25% in 2009, 24, and it's on a trajectory to go to 35% by 2035.
Well, Ron, once again, you're forgetting that we just went through the worst recession of our lifetimes, and everyone knows that when you go into recession, spending rises. And if you're condemning the rise of the size of government, I'm surprised you're not praising the president for having taxes be the lowest that they have been in 65 years.
No, I'm looking at the size. I'm looking at how much government spends, and it spends way too much. And like I said, we're on a trajectory to go to 35%. When you add in state and local government, we're already basically 40% government in relation to the size of our economy.
Ron,
40 cents of every dollar cycles through the government. That's just a bad metric.
Okay, you're mixing two things. One is short-run size of government because we went through a terrible recession.
No, that's
long-term. Second is long-run size of government because of the aging of the population and rising health care costs.
And this president's not addressing
that second point, but that is a problem we've known about for 40 years and we haven't done anything about. And I think the only way to do that is to take a balanced approach.
Right. Austin, I'm going to take it back to the primaries for a sec. Put yourself back in the White House. If you're the president, do you say, you know what, I am praying, I am hoping that somehow Gingrich wins?
Probably, because Gingrich is kind of prone to blowing himself up. But it seems unlikely at this point, as you guys were commenting. Now, I think one thing playing out here that Ron raises is an interesting point, I think, is when conditions aren't great, it was going to essentially be a referendum on the economy. If the conditions improve enough, not that the economy becomes a selling point, but merely that it becomes a contest of whose plan is better, that's in a strange way a great improvement for the condition of the president, because just the straight referendum ceases to be the issue and it becomes this contest of two plans. And that's a lot better than where we were in the debt, the summer of 2011 when we're arguing about the debt ceiling.
Well, but it's a very important argument because the president wants to add $12 trillion to our debt in his budget that he presented last year. We'll see what he says this year. And people aren't even talking about the real significant increased deficit risk. If we only average 2.5% growth, that's about, we just lost somebody, $5 trillion in additional deficit spending. We have some real significant risks here.
You're like a real TV person. You realize we lost him.
You're right.
And you said we lost him and then just kept going. I thought that was...
Austin was like, this...
Austin was like, I've had enough of this.
This is a real... There's no way I can answer this question. And I saw his shoulder move.
And he just said enough.
Yeah. He goes, I'm out of here.
He said enough.
No.
Austin, if you can hear us, thank you. If you can't, we'll try to get you back on the broadcast very, very soon.
Our apologies.
Would you like to answer for... Maybe you'd like,
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That is a Squawk moment, and it's brought to you by Joe Conn.
There you go. Austin, our apologies. We will have him back another time very soon to continue this discussion, too. Up next, though, we do have some names you need to watch at the opening bell. Right now, as we head to a break, take a look at the futures. They've been under a little bit of pressure this morning. You'll see right now that the Dow futures are off. Well, the S&Ps are off by just over 8 points. Dow futures have been off by about 55, about 60 points below fair value at this point. Squawk will be right back.
Can y'all feel that? Jig it out.
The police often question him just because they find him interesting. His beard alone has experienced more than a lesser man's entire body. His blood smells like cologne. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always watch CNBC, but when I do, I prefer Stocks to Watch and the Animal Orchestra. Keep watching, my friends.
Each day, our planet awakens with signs of opportunity. But with opportunity comes risk. And to manage this risk, the world turns to CME Group. We help farmers lock in future prices. Banks manage interest rate changes. And airlines hedge fuel costs. All so they can manage their risks and move forward. It's simply a matter of following the signs. They all lead here. CME Group, how the world advances.
letting me have all my friends over. She says I earned it because I have good grades. But I couldn't have done it without Kaplan Smart Track.
From kindergartners to 8th graders, Kaplan Kids helps kids be their best. Our online program begins with an academic assessment. Then, we customize a learning plan that's right for your child.
As a teacher, it's really important for children to be confident learners. And when they're having fun and learning skills, it becomes more natural for them.
Our adaptive online program features more than 1,000 hours of fun, interactive instruction in math and reading. Real-time progress reports let you know it's working.
I saw that we could try Smart Track through a free trial. I was looking for an affordable and convenient option.
Visit us at kaplankids.com today to enroll for a free 7-day trial. That's kaplankids.com.
I'm very happy that we found Smart Track, and I wish we had found it sooner.
Look closely. This $50 Buffalo gold piece is the first United States coin ever struck using .9999, that's 4 nines, pure 24-karat gold. The U.S. government had to stop production because of a shortage of specially made gold blanks. It's no wonder the price of this edition is going through the roof. Now you can reserve your own copy clad in 14 milligrams of pure gold. The final issue price was to be set at $50 per proof, but now this private non-monetary gold-clad masterpiece can be yours for only $9.95. With gold skyrocketing, price can only be guaranteed for 7 days. Each new 2012 $50 gold Buffalo Tribute proof is clad in 14 milligrams of pure gold, is proof struck, and utilizes the famous Buffalo nickel design. Strict limit of 5 proofs per caller. You must hurry. Call now.
Call 1-800-493-5129, 1-800-493-5129. Strict limit of 5 proofs per caller. Call 1-800-493-5129.
All right, let's take a look at some of these stocks to watch. We'll start with Thomas and Betts. I looked, Andrew, to see, and it's never been at 72. So that is that will top out if you look at a historical chart of TNB.
What did we say? There was a 24% premium that transaction?
24% premium. Right. ABB, which is a big competitor to
Switzerland,
to General Electric, acquiring Thomas and Betts for $72 a share. That's $3.9 billion total, 24% premium. Citigroup was upgraded by Goldman Sachs.
That was nice.
What do you make of that?
I think it's nice that they're getting along. Yeah. To a buy from a neutral, the target was increased, I like this, to 36 from 35.
I don't know if you saw the Wall Street Journal today, but our friend Dick Parsons, chairman of the company, may be stepping down later in the year. In March, they said.
You know who else Goldman Sachs upgraded?
Who's that?
Morgan Stanley.
Wow.
To buy from neutral. It added that to the conviction buy list.
That takes courage, or they're just trying to be nice at this point?
I've said this before. With me, Goldman has something called a conviction buy list. I would change that. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even say conviction in terms of any investment bank these days.
This is my strongly recommended buy list.
Right. Yeah. Just get, anything with conviction in it when you're...
We feel strongly about this. How about this?
I mean, you give the New York Times just that information that there is a conviction buy list at Goldman, and they're going to figure something out to show that... And then finally, Bank America. What'd they do there?
What'd they do?
Downgraded at Goldman.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh? To neutral from buy, target remains 8. Time Warner downgraded to equal weight from overweight at Barclays, target remains 38. And Kellogg downgraded to neutral from overweight at JP Morgan, target cut to 48. All the way down to 48.
Keep an eye on those stocks today.
Will you? Yeah.
I will try.
I don't always watch Stocks Watch, but when I do.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, coming up, we have more on the feud in the Sunshine State, how the Florida primary will shape the Republican effort to beat President Obama in November. A senior advisor to Newt Gingrich will join us at the top of the hour. Squawk Box will be right back.